Club has gallantly stepped in. So, welcome to all of you to the session on drinking in India. And it centers around a book called House Spirits, put together. It's an anthology put together by Palash Krishna Mehrotra. So, we have Palash here. We have Sandeep Roy, who has contributed to the anthology. And we have Nandana Sen, who has read the anthology and will also give us an insight of how it is to be a woman who happens to be with a glass at a bar in India and whether that mindset is changing. So I'd like to invite all my guests up on stage so that we can start. Welcome Palash, Sandeep, and of course Nandana. Can we have another mic or three? So to add to the atmosphere, we have got some bottles, empty ones on stage. I think this bottle can go because it's of the wrong company. In fact, you're not even supposed to see it. Yes. But yeah, ye wala le lo. It's a competing brand. Not allowed. So, anyway. So, Palash, those who know you will vouch for the fact that this book is no surprise at all.
Yeah.
So, what finally made you put your pen where your glass is?
I've been trying not to drink all of last year, but I did. No, but I have a reputation for drinking, and I think that's one of the reasons Renuka Chatterjee, who was the editor, she got in touch with me and said, I have this idea, and would you like to do this anthology? And I said, well, why did you think of me? And because.
And she said, duh.
So I immediately said yes, and then the anthology just didn't happen for a long time because I was drunk and a lot of the contributors were drunk. One of them who's a very fine poet who's in the anthology, Vijay Nambisan, who's got a piece in it called Rehab Diary. He checked into rehab. Then he came out and he said, is that anthology still on? And I said, yeah, no one's written anything. And so he came out and he finished his piece he came out of rehab. And so it's a very method anthology. I think everyone's in mode. And everyone's, I think one of the things was also that a lot of confessional pieces here, which I think is, which is nice because in India we often don't talk about certain things. So there is a lot about the dark aspects of drinking in this, which is the, the flip side of drinking. So I think a lot of people were brave enough to write very honestly about the alcoholism. But then it's not just about alcoholism. There is a lot of celebratory aspects of drinking, which also the book covers. So that's how it began, basically, with my editor getting in touch and yeah.
Okay. And are there writings from various time zones, old pieces from older literature?
Yeah, no, there's not. It's very contemporary. Contemporary, pretty much. There's not much period drama in this. It's very much about the here and now, and yes, people are just writing about drinking in contemporary India and what it's like, but trying to cover, all the ways in which it's, the unique aspects of drinking in India. So yeah.
Okay. So Shondeep, how did you make your way into a book like this about house spirits? I mean, I can understand him wanting to do it, but how did you get roped in?
Actually, Palash roped me in. I honestly have to confess I don't have that much expertise in the matter. I say piously, because I did go to St. Xavier's and I did win a medal once for good conduct. So I really am supposed to be the good conduct boy. So probably Palash needed a little good conduct boy writing about drinking in the book as well. Civilized drinking, like Calcutta, having a drink at the Calcutta Club. But I wanted to write a piece really about the fact that In fact, it was after I went off to the United States and came back 20 years or so later, I learned to drink whiskey in India because everybody here drank whiskey, and I was living in San Francisco where people drank cosmopolitans and this, and I never drank that much whiskey there. And then I come back and I learned to drink whiskey, and I find different kinds of whiskey drinkers, and it's all very, so it was a process of discovery in middle age of
So
a world of drinking.
the caste system.
Yeah, in
from
fact, I talk about it
single
in my...
malt, yes.
Not so much of the caste system of the drinkers, rather than the caste system of whiskey itself.
That's Sandeep's piece. It's about our obsession with whiskey, because Indians are obsessed with whiskey, and I have a feeling it's something to do with. I ask a lot of men in dive bars, why do you drink whiskey? And they say digestion ko suit karti hai. So you know, Sandeep's written about why Indians are so obsessed with whiskey, and the class system that exists in the world of whiskey. So his piece is called Whiskey Nation.
Okay. Before we get to the readings, Palash spoke about the book having some darker aspects of, drinking and the problems it can lead to. We don't have to be serious drinkers as women for it to show its darker side to us, because there are certain situations there are many bars in Calcutta even now where you can't go alone as a woman and order a drink. So, firstly, are you a drinker, or you are a social drinker?
I love to drink, but I have to admit, Malvika knows this very well, that when she asked me to be on this session, I was actually very surprised, but also very nervous. I was also delighted, but I was surprised and nervous because I cannot claim this to be an area of expertise for me, although I do love to drink wine.
But she doesn't have a corkscrew in her house.
That's right. We spent a whole evening trying to open a bottle of wine, which I can't remember how we managed to do it. Probably with our teeth, but we did finally get to the wine. And I do love wine. However, I cannot even claim to have a very refined taste in wine. I drink not very posh wines very happily. But I was delighted because it gives me an opportunity to talk to all of you and see Palash after a very long time. The last time I met him, his first book, which is also excellent, had just come out. And I hope to understand the intricacies of the drinking culture in India much better by the end of this hour. There's much to say about the complicated relationship that women have with drinking in India. That also the world has with women drinking in India, but I think it's a little too soon to get into the darker aspects of it. Before we do, I wanted to say, speaking of the nervousness that I was feeling, that as I started reading this book, my nervousness immediately dissipated, because one of the first pieces that I read gave me a lot of hope. It's a very short poem. May I read it?
Certainly.
Okay. Find it. It's not. Hold on. Yeah. Actually, I think I have marked it, but I've left my bag behind.
Yeah.
Can I get my bag? Thank you.
This was the Mir Taki poem.
Here?
The Mir Taki poem.
Yeah, I can't find. It's not.
First page pe, epigram.
It is in the beginning of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wait, it's taking
Here.
too long for me to.
Here.
What page number is it?
Here.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So, friends, you must forgive me, for I am somewhat drunk. If I speak rude words, blame it on the drink. You too may call me names or whatever else you think, for I am somewhat drunk. What can I do? If I try to walk, I stumble. Don't be cross with me. Please don't grumble, for I am somewhat drunk. Mir can be as touchy as hell when it is his whim. He's made of fragile glass. Take no liberty with him, for he is somewhat drunk. Now, the reason why I felt much comfort when I read this is that I realized that I have all the symptoms of being somewhat drunk, even without being drunk, because I am very good with rude words. I am a born klutz, and I cannot walk in a straight line, even without having a single drink. And indeed, my friends as well as my enemies tell me that I am touchy as hell. So perhaps there is something that I can contribute to this discussion. But since you talked about your love for whiskey, both of you did, one of the thoughts that we had, because one of the parts in this book that I really enjoyed, and I'm sure all of us did, is your very incisive and what should I say, detailed taxonomy of Indian whiskies. Perhaps you could share some of that wisdom with us, because it's a world that's quite new to me, and here are some bottles that perhaps you also spoke about the copywriting and how particular it is to each brand.
Yeah. No. These are. I wasn't. It's an IMFL anthology. It's about what the average Indian what we drink, because I didn't think there was much of a story in writing about posh drinking, although there is one piece or so. But there's it's not that interesting. I mean, I just wanted to cover what Indians drink, and they drink whiskey. Now, if you look at the European guidelines for whiskey, by definition, this is not whiskey. This is made of molasses, and there's a, but Indians like it, and I've drunk a lot of it. And you just drink this to get drunk. And what they do is they've really gone nuts with the copywriting. So earlier it was quite simple, but for example, I'll just read out McDowell's Platinum. Now McDowell's Platinum is
again the wrong brand, but please.
Yeah, yes.
We have too many copies of the book now here.
But yeah, now this is complete gas, but McDowell's claims to have been crafted, in quotes, by a master blender based in Glasgow. There is no master blender in Glasgow. We will be dissing the competitors, so it's fine. The writing on the bottle breaks down its appreciation of the whiskey into three categories: aroma, classic peat skillfully embedded on silky layers of rich malt and matured oak wood, which gets well rounded with a sweet touch of vanilla, honey, and complex spring flowers. I mean,
It sounds to the Victoria Memorial Garden.
And then it goes on with taste, complex yet distinct. Palate warming, enriched almond, clove, and cinnamon at the end give the whiskey a distinguished character. Then there was there's yes. Now Blender's Pride, which is
That's a good brand.
Big whiskey in India, because Blender's Pride somewhere became a respectable whiskey. So even in upper middle class houses, you can't tolerate Blender's Pride. I mean, Blender's Pride is okay, but now Blender's Pride. Now this is what the bottle says: the master blenders in question here, the label tells us, were Messrs. Patrick Joseph Lutz and Abby Stevens, who, quotes, now this is what the bottle says, decided to roll out one particular cask of whiskey from the cool cellars of the distillery and expose it to the warmth of the setting sun at regular intervals. I ended the section saying, every evening at 8 p.m., like millions of fellow Indians, I down some molasses with Swadeshi pride and hiccup through the cracker noise in my belly. I never forget to read the copywriting on the bottle, for I know the indelible imperial royal truth: whiskey is always in the words.
Could you read
the moment you read the bottle and then you
Could you read the bit about the blue symbolizing masculinity and wisdom, please?
Yes,
I thought that was very insightful.
Thanks for reminding me of it. I really got into it. I really thought the names were worth breaking down and taking very seriously. Yes, so there is this whiskey called Imperial Blue, and since that is
a good whiskey.
Yeah, they are very nice, and I've had several bottles of Imperial Blue, and Imperial Blue has spawned many imitators. So every second whiskey now, even the competitors, is called something blue. And there was a little bit I have.
Antiquity also has a blue.
Antiquity has a blue bottle. Yes. No, Nandana, where is it? Royal theme continues in royal. No.
So basically, whiskeys are male.
Yeah. Here it is. So now.
Page 10.
Yes, page 10. Yes, there is an entire lost world of copywriting on these bottles which underlines the gap between ambition and reality. Lost because the target consumer can hardly even read the fine print. Most cut to the chase and throw away the bulky packaging outside the liquor ven. Imperial Blue has spawned an entire breed of imitators in the sub-rupees 400 market. Officer's Choice Blue, Dennis, and my favorite, White and Blue. Now, white and blue is not as simple as it sounds. Quotes, white signifies purity and perfection. Blue symbolizes masculinity, wisdom, and royalty. So that's white and blue. White and blue, a heavenly blend, is of course a fusion of both. And its, quotes, captivating nuances come from the choicest composition of the blend, giving it a smoky aroma and a mellow taste of pure royal lifestyle. So, yeah, so I think, so now if Officer's Choice targeted the blue-collar worker, because I have something about Officer's Choice, yes, Kishore Chhabria sold 255 million. There was something about Officer's Choice was sold as a working class whiskey, and it was there in the copywriting. But then they have a variant of it called OC Blue, Officer's Choice Blue. And this is meant for bleeding heart yuppies with a conscience. The marketing mantra is spelled out on their website. The equity of Officer's Choice Blue is centered around the value of righteousness. The brand connects with the target audience of young, modern, and progressive consumers by asking them to take a stand against social wrongs, and is brought alive through the clarion call of "Raise your voice." So that's it. So
So it's male, it's good, and it's royal.
Yes, they just throw in everything.
And it's got hints of aroma and.
It's royal but also democratic at the same time, right?
So but it's another act of patriotism.
Yes, I think it's just more than whiskey. Yeah, so it's I can read something about where Indians drink. Indians often drink outside the house. I mean, I'm not saying every Indian, but a lot of the drinking. I wrote a piece for the BBC about it called "Why Drinking is an Outdoor Sport in India," which means that you'll see a man park his motorcycle parked outside the liquor van. Then he'll थोड़ा सा side में जाके, and he'll always have a can of Kingfisher Strong, and he'll have 1 or 2 cans by himself, and then get on his bike and go home. So because somehow it's also as part of a hypocrisy, even though we are the world's largest whiskey consumers, there is this whole thing in middle class India that it's also taboo. Drinking is also transgressive. You don't do it at home. So you will find in Allahabad, where I grew up, people would hire cycle rickshaws by the hour, and the idea कि भाई साइकिल रिक्शा वाले को बोला कि तुम साइकिल रिक्शा चलाते रहो for 1 hour, I'll pay you by the hour, because you can't take your liquor home, so you will drink in the cycle rickshaw. And then a friend of mine was telling me he used to hire a boat on Sangam pe he hired a boat by the hour and watch the sunset while he was being rowed around. But all this is just that sometimes you like to drink outside, but often you can't drink at home. It's taboo. Then on trains, you can be, we like our liquor so much that we drink on trains too, even though it's prohibited. You can be fined for smoking on a train, but you rarely be penalized for drinking. In our tipple tradition, drinking is always done on an empty stomach before dinner. In the old days, when Rajdhanis had chair cars, the attendants would come around with soda and soft drinks an hour before dinner was served. You chose your mixer, tip the bearer, and settle down into the cocktail hour on a running train. Then there are the efficient, organized types who board the train having done their homework. The man will start getting restless by 6 in the evening. He will look at his watch every few minutes. At 7, he will cast guilty glances at fellow passengers, then stick his hand into his duffel bag and pull out a Bisleri bottle containing a yellowish liquid that looks like Morarji Cola, but is actually whiskey mixed with water. Since he is well prepared, he will in all probability also be armed with a 10 rupee packet of Haldiram's Bhujia, a sip of bagpiper, a mouthful of bhujia, sip again, feeling sociable, good time to call home. Beta, how was your exam? Aaj ghar pe khana kya bana hai? This was actually, I overheard this conversation, and then he was feeling in a good mood after having a few swigs. So, I mean, this was another thing about, drinking on running trains. There are certain stations on long distance journeys, like if you're going to Guwahati from Delhi, it's a long journey. So you just have to ask the attendants on the train, and there are certain stations where they pick up bottles for you, and and it's a well-established system. So I mean that's another thing, but we just don't stop drinking. I mean we are
I remember there was a time the airlines too would serve drinks, and then this was the time of the Mania and East West and Modi Luft, and then everything stopped because people were just misbehaving and passing out and coming out,
this is
disembarking on
yeah,
stretchers.
Yeah, but strangely, I've never seen anyone misbehave on a train, and there are say, less rich people on trains than, say, who are flying. But I
guess the journey is longer, so they pace themselves.
Yeah, so I think Indians can handle the drink, because if you take the example of trains, they're very well behaved on trains.
It's a long journey. Here, that's a test match. Here's T20. They're kind of knocking back as many as possible.
Yeah.
So, Shondeep, what did you write about? Can you just give us a chota peg of what you served? Palash's book.
So as I said, I wasn't a very proficient authority on this, but what did happen as a result of writing this book, that I found out a lot about whiskey that I didn't know, including the fact I didn't know about the molasses part until I started writing it. So we were really a rum nation in a certain way. We just like to call it whiskey. But I'll read just like a little bit about, since we talked about the caste system of whiskey drinkers. The rites of adulthood, or more accurately manhood, were pretty clearly marked in alcohol for us. Beer in high school, rum and coke or thumbs up in college, and finally whiskey. Vodka, what was that? Gin, that's what ladies sipped at Calcutta Club. Wine was vinegar for most of us. But whiskey, as we drank it, we found which slot we fit into in whiskey's own caste system. There were whiskey drinkers who had uncle auntie abroad, who could always be relied on to bring back a bottle of duty-free Johnny Walker Black Label and a carton of Dunhills. Always take back Johnny Walker, my aunt in England advised me when I was living in America. That's the only kind of whiskey they appreciate in India. We had not yet discovered the alternate status value or the spellings of Glenfiddich and Lafroig. Then there were the whiskey drinkers who went every evening to the Calcutta clubs and Bengal clubs, where liquor was cheap. Compared to the outside hotels, the whiskey was served by ancient uniform waiters and ordered not necessarily by name but by abbreviation. BP in those circles meant blender's pride, not blood pressure. Then there were the closet drinkers at home, whose empty bottles of shame were weighed in broad daylight by the kabaddiwala every month. But Indians, being Indians, we couldn't throw away the freebies, even if they were badges of ill repute. So we all used the Royal Reserve coasters and branded glasses, while grandmothers turned the fancier, imported whiskey bottles into flower vases. And then there were those who drank Indian whiskey in shady, smoky bars. They were the whiskey riffraff, the ones who hooted and whistled when Amrish Puri growled about Black Dog in an item number. And, when you were talking, Palash, about these dives where people drank, it reminded me, in fact, of a conversation I overheard in a kind of a dive bar. When a friend told me about it, that somebody sitting right next to him in the dive bar is on the phone saying, yes, I was obviously calling home, and he's saying, yes, I'm coming home, but, I'm really stuck because, my colleague's mother is really sick, so we are actually she's in the ICU, so we are in the hospital waiting room while he's sitting there in the bar drinking happily. So, the conversations you hear in the bar are quite astonishing. And so I'll just read one last little bit, which is about now sort of, India has been opening up, as I discovered, and so whiskey itself is also changing, and the kind of whiskey drinkers are changing. So you don't have to depend on London auntie and California uncle so much. You can experiment with the dragon fruit infused vodka from abroad is coming, and instead of sticking to the tried and true old standards for that treasured 2-liter duty-free allowance. But I came back, and as a journalist, suddenly you start getting all this spam, and I got something from Pernod Ricard India inviting
our sponsors,
inviting journalists to Scotland to extend your knowledge of Scottish whiskies, sample top-notch malts and blends, and absorb breathtaking scenery. And talking of the aromas, Business Today described whiskey tastings as perfumeries, helping people pick out the vanilla and the geranium, the aubergine and lemon peels. Why anybody would want Bengal in their whiskey, I don't know, but apparently it's quite a done thing. And then there were high-end dinners with whiskey pairings in hotels. and McDowell, sorry, wrong brand, even has Diet Mate, which it called the world's first ever diet whiskey. It's enough to give an old school whiskey drinker an instant hangover. But luckily for the die-hard drinker, some traditions defy makeovers. Alcohol is still sold in many places in cities like Calcutta in cage-like hole-in-the-wall shops with iron grids. The Babu drinking his arak out of a bottle bearing the label of Presidency Medical Hall, caricatured in Kaliprashanna Sinha's sketches, would feel right at home there. In those days, it was common for chemist shops to have an under-the-table booze business. Now that layer of pretense has been shed, but it still remains a walk of shame. The buyers throng outside on the sidewalk in a raucous, disorderly group where auto drivers rub shoulders with business executives. The bottle is passed through the bars in the cage, wrapped in newsprint like some kind of contraband. And when the respectable, middle-aged Indian man shoves that little bottle of Officer's Choice, right, man? No, not Officer's Choice, into his briefcase with a surreptitious glance around him and calls his friend on the phone to say cryptically, "Ha, pegechi," as in, yes, got it, you know that whiskey still occupies a special place in our imagination.
So, Nandana, you heard about whiskies, the very, very important role whiskey plays in the Republic. So,
I was reminded actually when you were talking, just listening to you about, the fascinating names for Indian cocktails that we have, like curry scotch smash. Does anybody know what a curry scotch smash is, or what mojito kuch bihar is, or what a pan ki dukan is? I have to say that when I hear these names, I want to...
I know is called, which I actually like, is Kal Boishakhi.
What is Kal Boishakhi? What is that?
Boishakhi is aam pora sharbat with vodka.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Yeah.
How many women here drink? Not that many.
Not socially at least.
Yeah, and there are not actually that many women in the group. Sizable.
I can see two very firm, upright hands at the back.
Yeah, I do see some hands up there.
And one here as well.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were going to ask me something.
No, so I was going to ask you the same thing. Do you think the number of women who put their hands right up when asked this question is increasing in India?
Yes, I think it is increasing in India. Is India ready for it is the question. I'm curious about one thing.
But a woman, even in a fancy bar, a woman having a drink by herself I've never seen it. Even in a in a posh bar in Oscar's Village or whatever in Delhi, or there is still a kind of I don't know. We have, if you go in groups, it's fine, and there is more and more of that because the pub culture has taken root. I mean, earlier probably Calcutta, Bombay had it. Now other cities have it. Dehradun, where I live, the first pub opened there called the Great Indian Pub, and it had more women than guys, but everyone was in a group with other people. But that whole thing of just sitting at the bar and nursing a pint. Women still don't do that, even in 5-star bars.
And we don't talk about it, and we don't write about it, and we don't actually speak about it. I mean, I was very struck by the fact that in your book, there are 30 pieces by men and only one article by...
Two. Yeah, no, there was something about it. You see, I asked 9 women writers to write, and for some reason, they said no. And all of them said no at different times. Initially, everyone, said okay. And then, a month later, Meenal Bagale said no. Then, Eunice said no immediately, Eunice D'Souza. I mean, and these are people I know who drink or who write very well. So, I wanted, but strangely, they all backed out. Advaita, Kala, even Lakshmi Chaudhary, who used to be at First Post.
Didn't one of them get very upset with you and offended that you asked them to, didn't you? I thought I read that in the introduction.
Yeah, somebody who got offended.
Yeah, Eunice, it was Eunice, I don't mention her in the introduction, but by name. But she said, she said, Palash, I don't really drink that much, So she felt embarrassed that, why are you thinking of me? so yeah, but there is, so I don't know why they said no.
I think that has more to do with you, Palash.
Well, and then when the book came out, she said, I wanted to write, but then I was scared of the Shiv Sena. So I don't know, she changed it. But she lives in Bombay. So I told you as a single woman. So that's what she said. So, I don't know, they had various reasons. I would have liked to have more women in this. There are a couple of pieces. Kanika Gehlot has written about how, I can read a bit from that if you want, or other I can talk about it. It's about how pop culture took root in Delhi and what it meant for women who were in the media, who were working, for what it meant for them, how liberating it was, because it was also an act of rebellion to have your own money, to blow it up on, Long Island iced teas. And so, that is about how the drinking scenario changed for women in Delhi over a period of 20 years. So there is one essay on that. Then the other thing with women is that it's not necessary that a woman writer is going to write about women drinking. So for example, Anjum Hassan's story is about a son and his alcoholic father. But now, a very young journalist called Arunabh Saikia has written this fantastic essay here, which is a profile of Delhi's oldest female bootlegger, Shanti Devi. So, it's 20 pages. So even if it's a guy writing, but he's writing about a woman and, where she lives in Majnu Katila in North Delhi, and her stories, and he goes to her house bar, and this is another interesting thing, that women have been always involved in either brewing or in the sale of hooch. There are a few essays in here which talk about women running these bars. So, at one level it might be taboo or whatever, but then there's also, women have played a very integral role in bootlegging, in hooch manufacturing and distribution. Shanti Devi has a house bar, and where Arunabh goes and he drinks Murthal #1, and which is Thara. So there is country liquor in this book as well. We've not left out. So Adil Jassawala writes about drinking in country liquor bars in Kolaba. So yeah, there's.
But don't you think it's significant that you only there were only 8 or 9 women that you could think of whom you actually even approached? So the truth is, we are not really comfortable talking about.
Yes,
I love to drink, but my first reaction, as I said, when she asked me to do this, was, well, I don't know what I can say. And what do I? Not. It wasn't because I thought I was shy about talking about it. I just didn't know what I could. Immediately felt somehow I was not equipped to talk about it. And I do wonder if it has...
We can't articulate an opinion on this.
Yes.
But then the other thing that you mentioned that's very interesting, from looking at it at the other side of pop culture, how we don't see, as you said, we don't see women drinking by themselves. Very easily, very frequently. But we also don't see women drinking casually, normally in popular culture at all. We don't see it in films. We don't see it in ads. Ads for alcohol always, women only figure as objects who are being either seduced by the alcohol or being neglected.
The vamp drinks,
or the woman actually looks like the bottle of booze that the man is consuming. So the objectification is actually extremely direct, right? And even in magazine articles, you have language like, there was a Cosmo article that I saw last year which said something like 10 girly drinks that we are not ashamed to love. So why is this notion of shame associated with drinking to this day? When we get comfortable drinking, and Bangalore is a city where women are comfortable drinking, to answer your first question, are the hands going up? That's a city in which women do drink. It's also a city where the figures for drunk driving are the highest. But look what happened in Bangalore. Is it safe for a woman to drink? Is it safe for men to drink around women? When you get comfortable drinking, is there a sense that there is the need? Is there an effort to punish you or control you? I'm thinking also about what happened now we've forgotten about it, but when it happened in Bangalore 8-9 years ago, the pub bashing, it was a very scary thing. And I keep thinking about this line by one of my favorite novelists, Marguerite Duras, who said, a woman drinking is like an animal drinking or a child drinking. The idea that this is an entity that needs to be reined in and controlled and perhaps punished for bad behavior. I don't see, I mean, one of the things that I find disturbing is that we do not have representations of easy, casual drinking just because that is what a woman may want to do anywhere in our popular culture. So, I mean, all of you, we've all grown up with...
There are little references in...
very tentative.
Yes.
And it's still sort of, you know, you're doing it to make a point, even if it is just to have extraordinary fun with your friends. It's an extraordinary moment. It's not an ordinary moment, not a day-to-day thing like it is with men.
Let me read a small paragraph from Siddharth Bhatia's piece Permit Room, which is about cinema and the depiction of drinking in cinema and what, because often we don't have, people just, you say there's a scene and you've come back from work and you just pour yourself a drink. I mean, in American sitcoms, it's a standard, the guy walks into the door, heads straight to the fridge and pulls out a pint of beer and opens it, and that's like, and then the dialogue begins. And, and he'll just have that one pint of beer. But in India, we've not really seen drinking being normalized on screen. So drinking is always something which is, depending on the context, this is Siddharth Bhatia, depending on the context it is placed in, drinking can signify evil, moral depravity, or a slide into a personal hell. It can also be used to evoke laughter, since it makes the drinker do funny and stupid things. So either it's depravity or it's funny. If the on-screen character lifting that glass to the mouth is a woman, the viewer gets a frisson of excitement because it is almost certain she's a good girl gone astray. So, there is that, rarely is drinking casual.
But I do remember a scene in Vicky Dona where Vicky goes with his girlfriend and has a regular drink.
But that's the exception rather than the rule.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
I mean, you still have, if even a film like Queen, which I really loved, she can only sort of let loose and have fun once she's drunk.
Zindagi also has some normal drinking.
So, Dilwale, which was a while ago.
Shots is a big thing now. There's always a nightclub song, and guys and girls would sort of do shots, and then there's the Tik Chik nightclub song. So thoda,
So Shundeep, you live in San Francisco for part of the year, and you're with us for part of the year. So how do you reconcile the way drinking is seen in these two countries?
To kind of echo it's changing, so I'm making gross generalizations, but to kind of echo what Palash said, in fact, it is a much more normalized culture of drinking there, so the glass of wine that you're offered is, it's just par for the course. You go and you have dinner, you're having a glass of wine. There is not that culture which we have here, which you were talking about, where an American friend of mine who would come here would suffer from it, where you go to a party and you drink on an empty stomach.
Drink to get
drunk, and then, the food comes out and you instantly leave. It's like you drink, and then you eat and leave instantly. It's almost like the food is brought out as a signal that, okay, time to go home now.
What is the anthropology behind that?
I think it helps for you to get drunk, possibly. Or
so that's the biology behind it.
So you're like really getting your money's worth.
He said digestion is good with whiskey.
And the other thing, people just want to go to sleep then, apparently. And the other thing is that, you go to and this is a gender thing, you go to a restaurant in San Francisco or something, if you go with a woman, here I was just at a hotel right now with a woman who is an author here, and the waiter brought a food menu and the drinks menu, and the drinks menu automatically came to me, the food menu went to her. There it's more of an up in the air, it'll just, or they may just leave it on the table. So, but that's like an inbuilt assumption that's like hard to throw off. And I have women friends who've gone out to a restaurant, and sometimes you don't get, you have to actually ask for the drinks menu because they just assume.
My mother once in Allahabad, where I grew up, and my parents, so my parents had gone to a restaurant, and And the guy just said, "हम ladies को serve नहीं करते हैं," you know. So I mean, so these funny things happen. There was, so she said, "My father's like, it's my wife." What? So no, but you know, there are binge drinking cultures. Like in England, when I went to study at Oxford, there is a very, very heavy binge drinking, beer drinking culture. You know, there was this thing that you had to drink a pint from every tap, or you were called a girl's blouse. So it was that sort of culture, you know, and getting shit-faced was the thing to do. And also, I think recently talking about gender divisions, the millennials have closed the gender gap, and now for the first time in history, women are drinking internationally. Women are drinking as much as men are, because it was always a little less. But this was something I came upon recently.
So I think this is a good point to get some questions from the audience. Oh, again, some very, very firm hands. I think it's a female hand at that. Are there any mics?
There's a mic here. I can give my mic.
No, it's very difficult.
Good evening. Now, I want to tell you something. Maybe we're talking about a different class altogether, maybe one class, because I used to have a maid about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
She was very efficient and very good,
Yeah.
but 1 or 2 days a week she didn't come.
Yeah.
So it took us a little while to realize that actually she was selling country liquor,
Yeah.
and the day that there was something extra,
Yes.
she just drank it and didn't get up in the morning. So I was kind of shocked. So I asked her, "Does your husband like that?" She said, "We do it together." So is that a different class that we are talking about?
Yeah.
That's the first question. I have another question.
Yeah. No, I think there is there is this thing of women being in the business of selling alcohol, and we just spoke about it, that Shanti Devi, the bootlegger. I'll tell you another story, which is Adil Jassawala, who's got his poems in here about drinking in desi bars. He used to have a drink with his help, and after she'd done her work in Bombay, they would both sit down and have a drink, and then she would go off home. So, so sometimes class divisions go away when you share a drink. So I know at least one story of that happening, which was kind of very civilized and lovely. So yeah.
Okay, so the second question, I seem to have had some very colorful maids.
Yeah.
Because about 10 years ago, I had another maid who was quite an old woman.
Yeah.
And one Friday when I was pouring myself a drink,
Yeah.
she asked me, "Bodhi, kichu bheje debo?" So I said, yeah, that's a good idea. Why? She said, "No, because with your drink, you must always have something bhaja, like, a piyaji or something." So I said, okay, yeah. So where did you learn that from? She said, "Why? In the previous house, every evening, the husband would go off,
Yeah.
and the bodhi would have a drink." And I used to do this every evening. So that's another class. The middle or the lower middle class, where the husbands drink on their own, and the wives also drink, but at home. They don't go to bars, but they drink.
Yeah.
So the question is, do the husbands know about it? Yes. Do they like it? Maybe yes.
No,
That's the question.
Like in every other thing, the middle class is the one that has all the stereotypes and the
Yeah.
moralistic, the highest and the lowest end of the spectrum is far more liberated in many ways.
The husband and wife drinking thing and the class thing reminded me, we used to live next door to, they were basically sweepers who worked for the Calcutta Corporation, was sort of their housing project. And the guy would come and say, the kind of work we do, we have to drink because it's such, mind-numbing, dirty work. So the men would go out and get drunk. The women would tend to drink at home, but the women would drink a little less, because when the man would come back, then they would get into these staring fights. But the man usually would come back so drunk that he would easily get beaten up by the wife, who was somewhat less drunk. And this would all usually happen in the public. I mean, he would come and be lurching around, but he wouldn't be very effective in his thing. So he would be roundly beaten up and then left outside to work off his hangover.
So,
I just had, since we're talking about husbands and wives and drinking, I just remembered one time when I was shooting in Baroda. So as we know, drinking is not very easy in that state. It's a little bit like your story in Allahabad as well. And we had a very, quite a grueling shoot, and I really wanted a bottle of wine. So and there were a few of us who wanted to have a bottle of wine. And I asked how how could this be arranged? And the producer, the local production manager said, you have to fill out a form. You have to do this, and this is the way you can get a bottle of wine. You have to fill it out in advance and sign it, almost sort of get it notarized or something. So I got this form, and it said, Sharabi ke naam. The second question was, Sharabi ke pati ke naam. The second was Sharabi ke pita ke naam, and the third question was Sharabi ke pati ke naam. And those were the things before the addresses that we had to fill out, which was really kind of telling, because of course the first thing is, as soon as you ask for a bottle of wine, I mean, we don't have the language. Do we have a language? Do we have a way of signifying somebody who likes to drink but is not an alcoholic? Is there a word for that? It's a question, actually, since you're writers. Is there a word for that in Hindi? Is there an alternative to sharabi, for instance? There isn't, right? Is there?
Maybe in Bangla?
Should I use the mic?
Yes, please.
In Bombay, they used to say Beoda. Honestly. And so I come from Bombay right now. Anyway.
So what's your question?
No, so my question was something like this. So going back to our mythologies and everything, and Samudra Manthan, if anybody has read through Upanishad Rai Chaudhary's books, and that's how I grew up. Samudra Manthane Shura eschilo, and we all had Shura, and the Devas and everybody had Shura and everything. That's different. My question was, I was pleasantly surprised when in Malaysia about 10 years back, I was doing a sales call on a company, and it was not exactly in Kuala Lumpur, it was slightly off, and that was the guy who was a Chinese guy who took me over there and said, dude, you're Indian, so do you love toddy? I was like, what? Toddy? Now, let me teach you toddy drinking. And they got toddy, and they mixed it with the dark beer, and stout basically, and they gave me a concoction of the toddy and stout, and they were teaching me how to drink toddy in Malaysia. So since all of you are writers, I don't know, have you taken the effort to figure out how Indian liquors and how Indian drinking has actually affected people across the world? I mean, I saw it personally, I felt it personally. Yes, I did. So.
No, I wasn't aware of that, but it's interesting to know. But there is a chapter on toddy in this, but about Indians drinking, I mean, I know that number one, and these whiskies are imported to certain markets in Southeast Asia and Africa. But indigenous alcohols don't really travel well. So, I think that's one reason. It's because, if you drink toddy in Kerala, you can't even transport it to Delhi because it goes bad very quickly. So that could be, one reason.
So, this was Malaysia where they were brewing toddy by the Tamilian population out there. Locally, and they're teaching me. Second question is, one of the oldest things that we ever drunk, and I'm sure cheers to that. My drink's out down below. Old monk, Buddha Shadhu. Buddha Shadhu has been like this since always, and why is nobody making anything about it?
No, I was going to say that old monk, when you asked the question earlier, old monk is actually extremely popular in England, and is getting to be fairly popular in certain parts of America as well. And the other
it's
drink,
on sale in her.
And the other drink that is very popular in England is Sulla Wines. You can find that in clubs like this, for instance. Amrut is another one, which is
often easier to find abroad
than it is here. That's right.
But with the Old Monk and Sulla, is it? I mean, my experience in America has been there's an enormous NRI nostalgia for that thing. So everybody drinks Old Monk and think they're back in IIT. But I was in Silicon Valley.
No, I lead a double life. So my other life is to do with sport. So I remember 14 years ago, Sir Viv Richards came to Calcutta, and everyone had brought some fancy rum, and we're offering him these rums which are from Trinidad and Jamaica and all of that. And he said, "You have Old Monk," and the bartender was obviously gobsmacked. He said, "It's the best rum. I want Old Monk." And Old Monk was his companion for that evening. So if it's good enough for Sir Viv, I think it's good enough for the rest of the world.
Completely agree with you, because when we used to be in Singapore and Malaysia in those days, we used to, whenever people used to come down from Kolkata, we used to tell them, loka ki anbe, like, can I get this, can I get that? We say, just get us a bottle of Old Monk. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I had relatives in England who would say, bring Gondo Lebu and Old Monk.
Now there are three variants of Old Monk. So there is the
Yeah, but there's only one that.
So any other questions beyond Old Monk? There's a gentleman right in front. I think we have time for 2 questions.
My question to Nandana, that along with Old Monk, which I have seen in UK, that Cobra beer is also very popular Indian beer, isn't it?
It may well be. I'm not a beer drinker, but that's good to know. I will investigate that.
I think it is popular to a certain class of people.
curry restaurants.
Specifically the worker they're working. And they're very popular here in UK, which I've seen here.
Well, Kingfisher is very popular both in the UK and
But you never get it in a
US
pub.
too.
You always get these beers in the
Indian restaurants.
Indian restaurants, yeah.
But it's a little different in England. You get there are more chances of And when I was talking to answer your question, Sulla you can find outside of the NRI population now. It's sort of seen as a decent, not expensive wine.
Yeah.
And Old Monk is very popular among students. I'm told. So.
Wow. Good to know.
How long will it take for people to accept that women drink just like men do, without being stereotyped or being termed something? As writers, as observers, how long will it take, do you think? Anybody?
I think we all have a lot to say. I mean, I don't have an answer. I have the same question as you. I think and I'm sure you're not asking, what you're asking is more of a philosophical question, and we have to look at ourselves to answer that question, because it's not, it's a response that we have as a culture, as a nation, that is of course then permeated through what ministers say when incidents like what happened in Bangalore happened, or even what happened in Mangalore happened. It is again perpetuated through what we see in popular culture. It's we propagate it with the way we respond to ourselves drinking, the shame even women, the shame that we feel about it. So I think it's a change that of course needs to happen. I don't know if you have a sense of how long it will take, but I think we would all agree that it is crucial that we move toward that change somehow.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you and I know we can't predict how long anything will take, and given how politically popular prohibition seems to be proving, it seems to be going in the opposite direction in some places, where not just women, you make them equal by having nobody allowed to drink at all. So it's an equality in a different way. But I think in the end, the measure will be when an anthology like this comes out, and we won't feel the need at all to count how many or how few women are part of that anthology. It just will become immaterial, but we're obviously not there yet.
You mentioned prohibition, and I just remembered a quote from your book, which I think was a quote by the Attorney General in 1949 when prohibition, with respect to prohibition in Bombay. And he said, and this is a question for all of you to ponder. Basically, his concern was this: if you take the pub out of our republic, are we going to become a relic?
Yeah. Now that we are a republic and there is no pub in it, let us hope we will not become a relic. C.K. Daftari, former Attorney General of India, on prohibition being reimposed in Bombay in 1949. Yeah. No, but I think I read about in Delhi there were stats where women were buying more around Diwali. Sales had spiked, and women were buying more liquor than men. And there was what has changed is also where you buy, because where you buy liquor in India, these are horrible, dingy, pokey thekas, and that's not changed across the country. You have this jali, you kind of put your hand in.
Now you get it in Spencer.
So now, yeah, exactly. So that has changed, because the malls have liquor outlets, so women feel safer going there and buying. So I think once you make it easier to access the alcohol, women are happily buying it. But those thekas, even it's difficult for a guy to somehow find your way in that. There's so much jostling, and I don't know why they, yeah. So, but they're changing liquor vends. There are more self-service places. At least, I mean, there's more of it now. So there is some change, which from say 20 years ago.
Yeah, I had actually an observation, Malvika. Something that was shared with me over a drink, in fact, over several drinks the other night by William Dalrymple, that we were talking about Old Monk. Old Monk is not a Pernod Ricard brand, is it? It's okay then. So, Old Monk was founded by a British distiller in 1855, but called Edward Dwyer, who is the father of Brigadier Dwyer, who was responsible for the Amritsar massacre. Yes. And that is not something that appears in Old Monk literature.
Yeah.
Speaking about copywriting.
Yeah, I think any copywriter
Interesting.
would leave
I didn't know that. Yeah, wonderful.
But I wish you had not shared that with us, because now Old Monk will be forever tainted. I will see Jallianwala Bagh on that label from until eternity.
No, I don't think the sins of the son will visit the father on this occasion. So, are there any more questions? Concluding remarks from
we can end with
anthologist.
We can end with a very funny poem which is in here about how drink suits some people and it doesn't others, and you really don't know. After a point you can't really control. Let me see. It's called Nirvana. It's by this poet called Manohar Shetty, who lives in Goa, and a wonderful poet. Conduct Unbecoming. There. Then here 123 here. So now he's quit drinking now. So there are poems about his drinking days. There are there's this one that now he's stopped drinking. Yeah, this is called Nirvana. After 20 years of yoga and mastery of its acrobatic asanas, forehead on the floor, feet round the neck, total breath control, he tripped over the doormat and died of cardiac arrest, all of 44. Clean living, as he put it once, is the path to Nirvana. At the Good Luck Taverna, Eddie, 74, pours 3/4 of cashew fenny topped by a shot of Daughter's brandy down the hatch below a picture of Mother Mary between sunset till the bar shuts at 12. He goes home on his moped without troubling the potholes or the pigs and sleeps the sleep of the just. This his ritual the past 40 years, though every Christmas Doc warns him it's his last. I asked him once over a peg, boiled eggs and a saucer of peanuts the secret of his long life and sound health. He blinked behind his soda water bottle lenses and said, "Drink, siesta, and God bless. What for you is poison is for me tonic and medicine."
Well, on that note, I think it's a good time to bring this session and indeed the festival to a close. Thank you, and I think we can raise a toast to the way we drink in India and the subtext, some of which Nandana brought out about when women can possibly feature more in a book like this. Thank you, Palash, for this wonderful book, and he only told me to have this session, and I thought it's a great idea. Thank you, Shundeep, and thank you, Nandana. It was very sweet of you to sportingly agree to doing this session. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Calcutta Club, for allowing us to have this third session at your venue. Thank you.
And can we toast Malabika, please? Can we give her a big thank you for having organized this wonderful festival and really celebrated the spirit of Kolkata? Thank you so much.